name is still listed there. Can I change that?
Go right ahead. So,
If I can.
well, okay. So, anyone tuning in, welcome to to another holiday stream, and this time, I have with me a special guest, Mr. Bonsart Bukel of the Association of Ishtar fame. So far, he's assured me he's having a pretty good day thus far, and we're going to talk about his creation, and he's going to reveal some new updates to the lore of the setting, while I do some rogue trader. So, alrighty. So, why don't you give sort of a quick recap for anyone who happens to be new what the Society of Ishtar is going to, or is what the Association of Ishtar is about.
So hello everyone, I'm Bonsart. I'm a creator from the Netherlands, a writer and aspiring game developer, and I'm the author of a series called the Association of Ishtar, which takes place in an alternate 19th century in which anomalies called rifts are opening up all over the world. These are portals to other realities that calls for an influx of technology, but also of all kinds of anomalies and alien beings. And the Association of Ishtar is one of the factions who is investigating these anomalies and trying to counter these alien influences. And that's the series in a nutshell.
Yeah, I sort of half jokingly refer to it in like the very first stream I did where I talked about it as a Dutchman thinking with portals.
Yeah, I remember something like that.
Yeah. I think it was originally inspired by one of those old memes from like the 2000s. I think, yeah, because it was a reference to the Portal game, and I actually, and the idea sort of came to me because you've heard of Salmonella, right? The pretty well known YouTuber does these really short comedic videos.
Not.
Well, he did a video on what he called dead body hijinks, the weird stuff that happened to certain famous cadavers. And one of the things he talked about was the guy who figured out, a guy called Galvani. He's the guy who figured out things like animal magnetism and electricity, and so he would make frog legs twitch by sticking like wires into them. Right. And then the way that Salmonella did it, one of his nephew asked, "Okay, that's cool, but what if we did it with people?" And then, to quoting him, the city of London then said, "Hey, now you're thinking with portals. One freshly executed criminal coming up." Yeah, and that's kind of where I sort of got the idea for that joke in the description of that stream. Let me just quickly check the quest log. But yeah, it's an interesting idea because, as I understand it, because the portals basically it's a great mechanic for you to have just about anything because different planes of existence will operate on different rules. And so, there can be things where the setting is things where the alternate universe, the setting is almost indistinguishable from ours. Well, ours circa 1869, and others can be just completely and utterly alien.
Yes. Yeah. The idea. I don't. Yeah. So the idea originally came from like I have a YouTube channel called Radio Retro Future where I make video content on steampunk, and for the last 2 years or so also more videos about the Association of Ishtar with original art in there as well. So it's also kind of like my testing field to like trying new artists and stuff like that and see how they work, how we work together. And with that said, the original concept for the Association of Ishtar was that it was going to be a collaborative project, and the various worlds and portals would allow various artists to kind of like write their own steampunk worlds and ideas and concepts. However, the Association of Ishtar was supposed to have been a kind of perspective party that would visit these other worlds and describe them through their eyes from their perspective. That was kind of the idea. And they were also kind of like the SCP Foundation if they didn't know what the hell they were doing. So
I'm not familiar with that. The S&B Foundation?
SCP Foundation. Secure and Protect. Yeah.
Oh, the ones that's the one that comes up with all these weird sort of things. Okay, that one. I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I wanted to be a more structured, more narrative-driven version of that. Unfortunately, we had one contributor so far, so this is very much a work in progress. I am starting up workshops in which in which I can teach people how to write high concept stories for this setting, and thus adding them to the canon, so to speak. So we can also have like various writers write about their own history and countries and stuff like that. That's kind of the idea behind it at the moment. Once they have that down, we can say, okay, well, now we're going to work on these other settings.
Okay.
Because right now I prefer writing about the world itself, because there's just so much to explore and so much to expand upon. I don't think I cannot do that by myself, so I really hope to kind of like find more people who want to contribute their histories, ideas, and so forth to it as well. Where was I going to say? But yeah, that's the whole idea behind the portals. But that's started to take its own life, because there is this concept of traveler's decay, which you explained in your own video, which is an effect that will destroy everything that leaves its plane of origins within like 30 to 40 days. And that was basically originally a collaborative concept to prevent like kind of like touristy writers to just self-insert their characters who have like everything, because first they go to this plane, then they go to that plane, and they gather all this amazing technology. So that's why it is, and I wanted like these worlds to develop independently from one another. You know, we get that kind of like over the top idiotic ideas. But then it came like, okay, but how do aliens then interact with Atlas? That's the code word for the homeworld of the association. And yeah, that kind of led to the creation of all kinds of enemies who are designed with traveler's decay in mind. So that simple idea really started to form the fundamental ways of how monsters must be written for this series. So they all have like strange ways, and especially for the role-playing game, because in the books I mostly talk about robots and the radio waves and signals to control their assets. But here in the role-playing game, I also had to like create monsters, so I had to like kind of like create these biological reproductive cycles in which ways species, not so much animals, but species circumvent the effects of traveler's decay.
Yeah, that was interesting. Hold on a second. Someone's saying that that you're sounding a little low on there, and someone toying with the audio a bit. But yeah, that was an interesting mechanic, that the idea of transference decay, the idea that if you're basically too long in another, away from your own plane of existence, you just inevitably will start, crumbling to dust. Essentially, it's very slow, very incremental, but it happens, and this applies to all objects, organic or otherwise.
Yeah. Like maybe in the future we might develop some material, but I mean, then the thing is that everything should be made of that material, so it's kind of like impossible from anything that actually makes sense. But I mean, the problem with introducing such effects is, of course, that it would like influence everything. Like currently working on a board game that was greenlit Friday morning. And the game developer suggested like, there is this enemy, and they're drawing energy from the portals. And I said, yeah, no, we're not going to do that, because that desktop audio might be a good one. But yeah, what did I want to say? Yeah, so the idea of drawing energy from portals, I mean, yeah, it sounds like simple, but the problem is, then the entire economy would become like based on drawing energies from these portals. So that would change like how the world works fundamentally. And that's kind of like a problem with a lot of world building, where writers have like this idea of, then they do this, but it only applies for one specific situation, instead of like, why doesn't it apply to everything else in this world? Because that's what I would do from a practical perspective. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna adjust like the dialogue again because it was kind of running over yours. I apologize. Did not expect that.
Oh yeah. Oh, because you turned up the desktop audio. All audio was turned up. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So I'm gonna have to. Darn it. Options. Darn it. But I'm gonna have to accept that because there doesn't seem to be any way to get to the settings. Things.
Can you not turn down the game's master volume?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Main menu, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my fault. Well, definitely turn those down because there's probably going to be a lot of explosions.
I'm very surprised you cannot adjust that in game.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. But like there weren't any the other what looked like the setting options was not available at the moment. Oh well.
I heard a lot of good things about Rogue Trader. I just don't have the time.
Yeah, that's fine. We all got our priorities. But I mean, you're literally creating your own original game world and stuff.
Yeah.
So I know that, like, as a steampunk, you tend to, obviously your aesthetic is more, 19th century and such. What's your opinion of, like, I guess the Gothic aesthetic that the Warhammer setting in general goes for?
I mean, for the Warhammer setting, it's good because, especially the size of their buildings and such, it makes humanity look small in the presence of the sacred. I mean, the whole point is that they consider the empire like this sacred entity created by their god emperor. So of course everything is huge. Everything looks like a cathedral because that's how humanity as individuals relate to the rest of the Imperium. It's literally like the Imperium of Man is literally a cathedral. In a way.
When it's not being a massive factory, anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, even those factories look like cathedrals in the end, right? I mean, they are also religious institutions, maybe not by the Imperium of Man itself, but by the Order of Mars. But still, everything is sacred. I mean, the whole idea of machine spirits, like everything that humanity creates here is sacred, no matter how ugly and filthy it is.
So you're saying that I guess in this instance the Gothic aesthetic works because the Gothic helps emphasize sort of how small the individual is. Yeah. So So what do you think then is sort of the theme that sort of the Victorian aesthetic that is often used as the basis of steampunk? What sort of theme does that usually enhance?
Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, for the reason why the people are drawn to places like London and Paris is because they are big entities in pop culture. I think steampunk tells us more about our perception of the 19th century than the actual 19th century. I mean, especially when you're talking about the costume culture, like few people even know who Bismarck is, for instance.
Really?
They have very little knowledge of history. Like they don't know Bismarck. Maybe they know there was a battleship named Bismarck because they happen to listen to Subton. But most of them, if you ask them, they have no idea who Bismarck is. Ask them anything about the 19th century, all they know is pop culture icons like, I don't know, Sherlock Holmes, Sweeney Todd, Jack the Ripper. They'll know that type of things, right?
That still seems so crazy because Bismarck is the guy that was the mastermind behind Germany, and Germany was, I don't know if you know this, it was a big player in that period of history.
Like 9 out of 10 people who visit the steampunk conventions don't know anything about that because they're not drawn to the history of the 19th century. They're drawn to the costuming and the social aspect of it. And that's why I make a division between steampunk as an aesthetic, steampunk as a genre, and steampunk as a costume culture, because they're very different things. And if I talk to steampunk authors, they'll tend to know a lot about the 19th century, especially local history. That's what a lot of steampunk authors like, is to take their own local history, their own local city, and write an alternate history about that, with magic or not, and the tropes of steampunk. But a lot of the steampunk that you see, most of it is all fantasy with a steampunk skin. It would be too charitable to even call it Gaslamp Fantasy, which is the fantasy cousin of steampunk. Steampunk is a subgenre of science fiction that kind of mixes alternate history with cyberpunk, and Gaslamp Fantasy tends to have an alternate history thing, but again, a heavy reliance on pop culture icons. It's like Frankenstein, Queen Victoria, but Queen Victoria is also a pop culture icon.
And yet Bismarck isn't. Huh.
Bismarck is not. No. I mean, I'm sure there are steampunks that have Bismarck in there. I don't know them.
Maybe they're German. Maybe those are the only ones who know him.
I mean, German pop culture is not part of... Germany, I notice, is often more depicted in a kind of like Austrian-Hungarian sense. There's this tapestry of dukedoms and fiefdoms and such. And when one fiefdom betrays another, works together to overthrow a noble family, kind of like what happens in Leviathan. But outside of that, it's funny that like the Anglo-Saxon world is kind of depicted as like the civilized world together with France, but Germany and those parts of Europe are more kind of depicted as a kind of like Wild West frontier, the old world as it were, where everyone is having like the World War I all the time, But again, that's kind of like the pop culture version of Europe, which is all seen through the world wars.
And like you said earlier, the idea of how sort of taking your hometown and doing alternate setting. I'm guessing that's obviously the Netherlands is your home country, so it makes sense that it would be like sort of a major part of the setting. You place a lot of emphasis on that. Britain then comes up second, and then everybody else. I'm guessing at this point you haven't fleshed them out so much yet.
Important in my setting
down. Really?
Than Britain, I'd say. But that's also because I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but I mean because of Napoleon.
Yeah.
First of all, he plays a major part, although his role has not been clarified as of yet in what degree. But he has like the Académie d'Aéronautique. Which is kind of like this law stack organization now, but I mean, like as far as the Netherlands went, like I asked my community, hey guys, I'm gonna start working on this role-playing game. What would you like the lore to focus on? And the Netherlands came out. I mean, I don't think that many Dutch people watch my channel, but the Netherlands came out like far on top. So I guess people just wanted to learn more about something that no one talks about. Then again we're talking about it's again about England, it's again about Paris. But I mean, for instance, when you watch my videos, like I have one big video on French Guinea about Kian, which I definitely which now has a source book worth of information in that video alone. And I'm working on one last video talking about Devil's Island.
That's the one. That's the one across from French Guiana, and that's where the battle chassis originated.
Kian Artemy, the French penal colony, and that's worth a source book alone, And now we're also working on a video about steampunk cities where I'm gonna talk in depth about Liverpool, but also an artificial city in the Netherlands called Novapolis, which is the capital of Utrecht. So, but I mean, no one talks about the Netherlands that much in the media because again, it has very little pop culture allure. But I mean, if you look at the history, like we had like we were the creators of the original New York, right?
Right, New Amsterdam.
Yeah, we had access. We had exclusive access to Japan. We had parts in India as well, and all that stuff. I mean, if you want to learn about Japanese history, you need to learn Dutch. That's the cliche, because that's the only outsider's perspective that there is at the moment about Japan, about that era. So And of course, we also we were the first republic since antiquity, which is very revolutionary. We were the first ones to have a state's army. That's a Dutch invention that the more famous Adolphus Gustavus then copied from Prince Maurits, who was the son of William of Orange, the original one.
Mm.
So there's a lot of reasons why historians are studying Dutch history, because it's such a unique phenomena. We made land out of nothing, we got involved in trade everywhere from as early as the Bronze Age. It's quite incredible. But we were not the British Empire. By the 19th century, we were already an empire in decay. Kind of like King William I, who was Louis I in the Koningin of Holland. I'm saying, Koningin of Holland takes on the role of William I in my version of the Netherlands, and then you've got this less incredible Louis II and Louis III we currently have in the alternate history version. So. But they are Napoleon's family. So
right, and it's kind of funny that especially in the your alternate France, you still have the Second Empire, but it's just a different nephew of Napoleon. Because Napoleon III was the son of, I believe he was Louis' son, wasn't he? Yeah, Louis.
The original Napoleon.
III,
Napoleon was actually Louis' son in
his
time.
Because Louis married Hortense.
So Louis III is the actual Napoleon III.
Half. It's because I know that Napoleon, he knew that he was, at this point, this is before he married the Austrian princess. And so Josephine obviously was too old. And so he decided to ensure an heir to marry one of his brothers to one of Josephine's children by her previous husband. Problem is, Louis and Hortense really hated each other. And then, when Napoleon remarried and actually had a son, the whole point of the marriage was rendered moot. And then, we know that happened. But instead, you decided to pick a son of Jerome Bonaparte, the sort of useless baby of the Bonaparte clan.
Yeah.
And,
well, there is a conspiracy behind it. But I realize now, because of the board game, I now started writing the 1870s, 1880s. Then I realized, oh my god, Charlemagne must already be at least in his 60s at this point, 50s, 60s. So I had original other plans, but then that's not gonna work out chronologically. So I'm my original plans from Charlemagne are kind of going down the drain now. This is one of the reasons why I don't like writing these big histories, but because I prefer to work out my world one short story at a time. So before I started writing my first book, I already written a couple of dozen short stories, each depicting various things. So when I actually started writing the book, I already had down how I was going to describe everything. It's also one of the reasons why whenever people follow my workshops, I always say start with short stories before you start on big books. Develop your style, find out what your writer's voice is. But that's my lesson for it. But I am now exploring. I can still change it, but I don't know where else. I find to insert a successor to Charlemagne now. So maybe instead I can make the coming events that are going to happen in 1870 more of a heroic end to him rather than the conspirator I had planned him to be. But I was quite surprised by what I managed to pump out for the role-playing book itself in regards to that history, because the thing is with writing such alternate histories is you don't just want it to be a retelling of the same history. You want there to be the fantastical elements that are, that makes the association of Ishtar the association of Ishtar.
Damn it, I'm sorry, because I'm completely lost on how to proceed. So, watch me being a complete pleb fumbling around. It's a good thing that you're here to talk about stuff. Otherwise, this would be a really boring thing. God damn it. I'm forced to look up the tutorial. This shows you what a miserable pleb I am. But yeah, it's interesting because it's also kind of funny that when I read the lore notes, Austria-Hungary is still Austria-Hungary. That is a steadily decrepitating empire because, God damn it, Franz Joseph is just still allergic to any idea of reforms, and the Hungarian aristos are a bunch of corrupt asshats.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, and this is where I should probably start inserting the more fantastical elements, where they start coordinating with all kinds of Rasputin-esque characters or start propping up. I already managed to create one for the British, which I'm actually very proud of.
I believe you said you have Prince Albert live in this timeline because someone found a cure from another plane.
Yeah. There's absolutely going to be no side effects. No, sir. No, sirree. Just saying that I also introduced a medical institution in there. But yeah, I'm currently trying to figure out as of today, yesterday, kind of make an outline, what were some of the major events during the 1870s, 1890s, 1870s, 1880s, and kind of create a theme for it. I want the 1880s to be kind of a reflection of the 1980s. That kind of idea that people have that the 1980s were kind of the zenith of innovation and advancement and economic drive, and then kind of have the 1890s become this kind of sense from things are kind of all right, but there's also this increasing threat from the rifts, just really crawling up to the civilized world now. But yeah, so I'm trying to keep there to be a kind of narrative flow as events unfold, rather than just have a summation of facts, stuff that happens.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still just looking up tutorials and stuff to help me progress to the next goddamn thing. Yeah. But anyways, well, sort of a question though, because one of the big, clearly one of the major, I guess, poster girl for this, for lack of a better term, was you decided the chassis bataille, I believe that's how you pronounce that in France. So where did you decide to have this idea? But what if we took the French Foreign Legion? Oh, finally, what if we took the French Foreign Legion and essentially added mechs? Finally, I figured out how to progress.
Yeah, so again, this just came from writing the short stories.
Okay.
And the idea was that there was this force that would do the dirty work in containing large anomalies, in particular the rift breaches, which are very violent tears in reality that spawn for all kinds of cosmic horrors, like the Lorraine exclusion zone. That's gonna be a big one. I'm currently writing that part of the next lore. And there needed to be this kind of penal legion that did the dirty work. People who had no qualms with shooting civilians, because they just couldn't risk anyone escaping those affected areas because of possession, infection, and whatever. So they became kind of also they needed just plain cannon fodder because they didn't want to risk regular troops in fighting aliens. They had no idea how to fight. So at one end these penal troops are expendable, at the other end they are also just ruthless assholes. That's why they also wear bomb collars, that if they go over the line they can be exploded. That's what I explore in the book The Casket Girls, and the Max kind of came from that same idea that okay, these are guys, they have to fight aliens. They're also the only ones who are allowed to use weird tech, as it is called,
Right.
like the super advanced technology that only exists in very small supply.
Yeah.
But because they fight such dangerous enemies, they are allowed to use it.
Yeah. And because the idea of the way the weird tech works is, again, because of traveler's decay, you can't actually bring the thing back and reverse engineer it. You have to bring like a blueprint of it or something, like the idea in your own head.
Yeah.
Or like you either.
I mean,
yeah.
you can bring it back, but you only have a small time frame.
Okay.
To, like, take all the notes, make all the notes, make all the Röntgen, like in the role-playing game. I therefore also have included like portable X-rays and stuff like that, because you need it for those types of operations. But yeah, there's also like in the last book I also introduced this small task force by RAW, the International Committee of Rift-related Activities. That they have like this small task force of scientists who have like all this types of equipment and run around, like when the Imperial Penal Legion goes somewhere, they run behind them to take like pictures of the cadavers and whatever they find as quickly as possible. So there's a lot of time constraints, and that's also something that we want to see represented in the role-playing game. If game masters want to go that far, that's kind of like my issue that I currently have. Like, okay, I offer all these ideas on offering time constraints on missions and stuff for building vehicles and that type of thing. But are game masters really going through all the effort of doing that? We'll see, I suppose. Playtests are available on our Discord. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, but as far as the mechs are concerned, like you want something eye-catching, right? And everyone likes big stumpy robots, and so that's where it kind of like started with. And then I started, okay, well, where are these troops coming from? And then I was looking up like penal legions and that type of stuff. I'm not sure how I got to Cayenne, but it is definitely like one of the more notorious penal colonies in history. Like they literally have a place called Devil's Island. That's a real place. In my version, it's just a lot bigger. And yeah, and then also the ideas. I'm not sure how I came up with the idea of female pilots. It was more like, yeah, are you gonna let women fight big hungry monsters? I mean, yeah,
if you're desperate enough, yeah.
Yeah, if you're desperate enough, yes, but like not hand to hand as the men are doing currently. So, and that kind of led. Okay, there are. I figured I like that the women on Devil's Island were separated from the male. Well, not on Devil's Island, but the Cayenne Penal Colony, I should say. They were isolated on an island called Saint Joseph, on a cloister there, which was kind of like a female prison. Because the idea was that these women called casket girls would populate Cayenne, the civil city of Cayenne, and they would then raise families there. That was kind of the idea, because Cayenne was a rough place. All these colonies were rough places because they were like 90% men. Like you're talking pelt hunters, soldiers, marines, navy men. Prospectors, people who are not home a lot, people who are not very simple. If you watch Deadwood, that's what you're talking about. So the only female population there would be prostitutes, and maybe like the governor or something would have his family there with some female staff. But for women in particular, colonies are extremely boring places. And so they needed to be incentivized to go there. And how the French solved it was first they would subsidize women to go there. These were called the king's women because they got like very lucrative dowries from the crown. But later that stopped, and basically they started sending out the poorest women, like prostitutes, as kind of like getting rid of criminals.
Yeah,
Like they
classic colonial administrative nonsense. Send the undesirables to the colonies.
Yeah, indeed. And there was a very short period in which they would arrest prostitutes and send them overseas. This led to a lot of public backlash, so they stopped. But the criminal ones would still be arrested, sent to asylums, and from the asylum they would be sent to the colonies as the so-called casket girls, because they had like these small caskets, cassette cases, which would then bastardized to English to casket. There was also like this idea in New Orleans about casket girls of, vampires, because they weren't very healthy when they came out on the other side of the ship.
I'll bet they weren't.
Yeah, and they also have the Pelican girls, which I think was Cuba. Yeah, you've got a ship called Pelican, who like transported a lot of women like that. So you've got the Pelican girls, I think is a term used in Cuba. But yeah, they would also be sent to Guyana, to the penal colony. There they would be quote unquote rehabilitated in the convent, and from there they would then migrate into the civil population. At least that was the idea. Didn't turn out very well. They were mostly a cause for an outbreak of syphilis and those types of diseases. Because there were not a lot of women around, so they had a little treasure trove there. But
it just killed the enemy commander. Sorry about that.
Something like that. I don't know if that happened, but no, they like send out a few dozen women like that, and before they knew it, they had like a massive syphilis epidemic at their hands. But the casket girls in my universe were sent to the same convent. However, here the convent is a mech factory where they would test and pilot these mechs in an attempt to reclaim Devil's Island from the alien infestation that's on the island. And later on, once the world discovered what was going on there, they would be deployed as like penal troops, as an international response force, and deal with the most dangerous infestations as both cannon fodder and kind of like special forces. And that is what the Casket Girl miniseries is about.
So first, hey Skunk's Workshop, welcome to the stream.
Yep.
And yeah, because like that was sort of the impression I got from this, because basically, especially after sort of I guess their existence became international knowledge. There was that.
Streams Enwin forever. Yeah, I've got Enwin right here.
Yep.
In fact. Enwin is right here, tucked in my waistcoat.
Yeah. I still haven't read that yet, but at some point I'm going to try and make room for it, because I've got quite an extensive list to get through, even though I have enough PTO that I can take most of like the upcoming holiday season off.
I mean, the Casket Girls isn't very long.
Yeah.
So,
but it's like the impression I got was that after like they became public, they sort of became like the way that I think I summed it up in the previous stream is they were like a more lethal. They were very much like a troubleshooting institution. Basically, it's like the international government say, "Okay, France, we'll let you keep your mech girls. However, they're gonna work for us as well, not just you.
Yeah.
Anytime something goes, bat guano, and we need them, you will send them to us."
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed. That's indeed the idea, and the Casket Girl miniseries is about the 3rd Regiment, the 3rd Battalion penal troops. However, in the 2nd volume, they are making the transition from being, or at least the Casket Girls are making the transition from being penal troops into being regular troops. And the 3rd book is going to be their transition from being regular troops into being their own private company. But that's all. So in the lore I'm writing now, I'm talking about them as though they are already private entities. The first being the Fata Furiosa, or the Furious Fae. Um, but yeah, they're kind of becoming these also in quote unquote politics or the culture war of the 19th centuries, where they also become these feminist icons.
Well,
So
of course.
yeah, so I'm also gonna play with that a lot. That there are these various Casket Girl groups, and they all bloody hate each other.
Oh, bet they
Um,
do.
because the Furious Fae are like former convicts, and then you get like these very posh, uh, lady-esque Casket Girl battalions that are enamored by the idea, but do not comprehend that these are convicts and not like women with like lofty goals of like female independence or anything like that. So yeah, and that's but the first leader, the first person to manage one of these companions. Remember, these are convicts. They did not go to Kian without reason. So I'll leave it at that. Um, but yeah, so yeah, the Fata Furiosa, and I already came up with some other names of other penal girl battalions because there was a party maybe interested in doing a Casket Girl themed board game, um, where all these groups are they on one end it's cooperative, but it's also a bit competitive that all these groups are trying to sabotage each other. Uh, so they get to the bounty first. So it's kind of like cooperative hunt showdown in a way
Oh.
with backstabbing. That's seems like a fun idea to me. But first we're gonna do a other cooperative board game where you play one of the special committees of the Association of Ishtar and their allies. So
Yeah. So let me see. I guess in terms of this being a steampunk setting and such,
mhm.
such, such, what do you think was like the biggest influence on getting you into this particular genre and its accompanying aesthetic? Because it's like a lot of punk genres. It's very much they're all sort of a kind of retro-futuristic in their aesthetics. It's why you have atom punk, diesel punk, all these different, and they're all just based on like especially their aesthetic. It's based on what was the aesthetic of a specific period of history. So what got you into, I guess, late Victorian, both like this setting as well as like the genre and the aesthetic that goes with it.
I mean, the reason, and again we have to go back to pop culture, is of course that it's a very dynamic era. It's an era of change, and I don't mean change like, oh, they got steam engines. No, it's like an era you've got a rural society that becomes like an industrial society, and I emphasize this in my latest video on steampunk cities. And I need to make a video about steampunk's relationship to the industrial revolution, because people have a very wrong image of what the industrial revolution actually means, right?
Huh.
Because what the industrial revolution really means is that we were a rural society with an emphasis on agriculture, and 90% people lived in the countryside. By the end of 1850, the majority lived in the cities,
Hmm.
and all of that happened within a period of less than 100 years. Right? And that sounds like a long time, but when you think about that, our written history goes back 6,000 years before Christ, so 8,000 years at least. That's really, really fast.
Yeah.
Really, really fast.
Um.
And
Sorry.
that's what makes it such a revolution.
It is. But it's also like I think it's also because like I think values most apart from like things like the abolition of slavery and stuff. To my understanding, values most remain consistent throughout the 19th century because at this point we're firmly in the post-Enlightenment period. This is it's kind of like we're in the post-Enlightenment, and like I guess by the time you get to at least the 1848, like when all the revolutions were happening, we are firmly post-Enlightenment by then, even though it's kind of silly to try and get a specific date because it's not quite history is not quite so neat as the scholars like it to be. But we need narratives because it helps us make sense of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
I mean,
sorry,
when
you
it
go
com-
on.
yeah, when it comes to like that, I think that you really have, I think when I wrote my history for the Association of History for the role-playing game, it really was about, okay, it's really about this process of liberalization. I try to avoid like such ideological terms, but it is kind of like impossible because people want representation, people want representative governments, like and whether that would be monarchy or something else, that didn't seem to matter as much as long they felt represented. They wanted constitutions, they wanted a very different relationship to the government. And I think that's like one of the biggest things of the Enlightenment is that sense of representation. And I mean the Americans looked a little bit up to the Dutch, like how the hell did the Dutch go from being a monarchy to a non-monarchy? Because when the Republic, I should say the Dutch wanted independence from Spain,
Yeah.
they didn't want to become a republic. They asked the Queen of England to become their sovereign. They asked other kings to become their sovereign, and they said,
That's
"Oh,
interesting.
we don't want war with Spain."
Yeah, because I thought because I always saw I admit I'm not fully knowledgeable on the 80 Years' War, but what little I saw of it, I guess it's because of my relative ignorance. It always seemed to me like an independence struggle. Well, and I also think.
I mean, yeah, but because they saw, like, we have a very different idea of independence than they did.
Okay.
And that's where a lot of, like, for example, the idea of freedom. Like, oh yeah, they wanted freedom, man, and you've got like this guy with blue paint on his face screaming freedom. Oh, so wonderful. But that's because we have a very individualistic sense of freedom. But that's not what they meant. When they say freedom, they meant self-rule, sovereignty. That's the difference. But when the Dutch had declared the King of Spain a tyrant for various reasons, for his religious ideas, taxation, the fact that they could just do all these things without, because the Dutch always had a fairly representative system. They always were they were provinces, they were cities, and all of these cities had a very long tradition of collaborating on, for example, water management. That's why I put so much emphasis in my stories about the water management, because if there was no water management, there would be no Netherlands.
Right.
So we always had that tradition of collaboration and tolerance, because we kind of had no choice.
Yeah, and so that's why, unlike all the other post-Reformation societies where one religion sort of mostly stamped out the other or reduced them to a minority, yours were sort of the pioneers of religious toleration pre the Treaty of Westphalia.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a reason for that, and I mean, the Dutch were also relatively highly educated because of their prosperity. So, the witch hunts, for example, rarely caught on in the Netherlands. And of course, it's also a very small area. That's also very important. When Americans talk about, like, healthcare and all that type of stuff, like, a lot of Europeans are like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? You're fucking huge. How are you going to do that at that scale? Because our economies are fairly manageable in that way. I mean, we cannot afford such things anymore, but I mean, it used to be fairly manageable. Now that seems to be coming to an end. That's a different discussion. But I mean, because the Netherlands is such a self-contained, very densely populated area, traditionally very densely populated, there was a lot of management and collaboration, and in some cases, collaboration, and we also shared the rivers, which were, and whenever people touched the rivers, there would be civil war, because like we've got the Hoekse and Kabeljauwse twisten. I don't know how to exactly translate that into English, but they were two quote-unquote civil wars. But those were about trade, because one countess thought it was a good idea to give particular privilege to one city to be the only ones to hold markets at that certain river, and which all the other cities at that river said, no, you're not. And, that type of stuff. So once you started like trying to manipulate that system from a centralized point of view, you had civil war, and that's kind of what happened with the Spanish king as well, when he started trying to micromanage the Dutch economy, like through heavy taxation, trying to get them involved in these wars that had no relevance to the Dutch. And this is an area that was always very self-reliant. That's why it became like it came apart from the German Holy Roman Empire. Like there was no independence war against the German Holy Roman Empire. It just separated, because that happened organically, because it was just such a integrated area of that empire. And yeah, it's a very long history that persists till this day. So we'll see how that will develop. But yeah, I don't know, what was the original topic again? I forgot.
I am too, but then I'm sort of focusing on the game as well as listening to sort of follow what you're saying. So I guess we're both a little lost here. But it's kind of fascinating because before, obviously my knowledge of Netherlands history and especially has sort of gone up a bit ever since I read your initial the lore documents you sent my way.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of once we're through with this, I'm gonna ask sort of have we gone over the new lore you've come up with? Because if not, we'll sort of start on that after I've asked this little tangent.
Let's see. Ask your question. Because I'm not sure, because we covered a bit of the new lore, I don't know exactly what more documents you've read.
Because it was just the one that was the Google Doc you sent me, where I think we briefly mentioned you had some new sort of a direction for Charlemagne II, but I think that might have been it.
Yeah.
But
that's lore that I've yet to write.
Okay.
So that's what I started working on today, and I was like, oh. Wait, how old is Charlemagne when all this happened? Because, I like Jerome. I mean, he could be born. Like in the current document, I've kind of suggested that Charlemagne was already alive before Jerome was deposed of power in Westphalia. So. Yeah, that would make him that by the time the new war happens, that he's already in his 70s. So, yeah, that's I may have to specify that's not desirable. So either there's already a Charlemagne II, or there's this really old Charlemagne going around. And it kind of puts a spanner in the works of some of the ideas I had. Yeah. I can still make it work. I just have to be creative with it. Still, I was rather surprised I came up with that plot line to begin with. But that's one of the fun things about using history as mere inspiration. Oh, this happened, and it's yeah, it can be tricky, because in history sometimes things happen there's no fucking way that's real, right? And if you write it, people would consider it to be just fiction because it's so over the top. But no, it's real. And for example, the distinction between Jerome and Louis, that's something from fiction. You've got this absolute loser of a guy, and this other one is this fucking paragon.
Yeah. Louis and Joseph seem to have been the only reasonably competent brothers that Napoleon could rely on, and even then, sort of Louis became very pro-Dutch because he figured, well, I'm king of what I guess is the Batavian Republic at that time, or whatever they've called it. Okay.
It was already passé.
Okay, yeah, so they sort of decided, we're going to drop the pretense of the sister republic and just admit you're a French puppet state.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then I think Joseph, he was originally the king of Naples, and the Neapolitans really liked him. But then Napoleon, I don't remember the exact reasons, he decides, I'm just going to depose the Spanish Bourbons because they're so useless and treacherous, and put Joseph in charge, and like that was like his second big mistake. The first one was just trying to enforce the continental system.
Yeah.
So yeah, the three mistakes that brought him down. First was the continental system, because it all sort of spun out of that.
Yeah.
Then screwing with Spain, and the third was Russia.
Yep.
It's like, there's like, if I ever, because I've wanted to like maybe do a video essay on Napoleon, and I would love to do like a chapter that's just entitled "C'est l'économie, stupid." Yeah, it's the economy, stupid. Because everyone says like Russia was Napoleon's big oof, and it's like, nah, Russia and Spain were both the consequences of his big oof, and that was the continental system. But yeah, sort of going back to where I was originally. Like I said, I sort of want to thank you, because reading like the lore and like how it differed from the actual history, I've sort of learned a bit more about like of Dutch history post Napoleon. And it's kind of weird because a few months ago I got this interesting audio book it's an English translation by a Belgian called Bart van Loo. And he did a history on the Burgundian dukes, who sort of eventually took over the Low Countries during the High Middle Ages and the 100 Years' War. And so I don't know what your view on it, but Van Loo really seems to view the Valois Burgundians as sort of a very important, almost a proto-founding father role in the idea of the Low Countries becoming a distinct and unified socio-political identity.
I mean, because the Burgundians would turn into the Habsburgs, right?
Well, sort of, because Maximilian I, Holy Roman Emperor, married the last surviving daughter of the last Burgundian duke, and so it's more like that's how the Low Countries became part of the Habsburg inheritance. Yeah, but Van Loo makes the point that like from the moment that Philip the Bold married Margaret of Flanders, with each successive generation, because the Low Countries were so rich, and that means tax revenue if you're a feudal lord. And so Philip decides to, by marriage and by diplomacy and by conquest, take over more of the Low Countries. But because the Low Countries are so wealthy and so prosperous, with each successive generation, the Burgundian dukes become more and more aligned with the Low Countries than with Burgundy and with France. And that's by the time of John the Fearless, which was Philip's son, you have sort of the Burgundians are almost like a peace party. It's like, hey, we're in a lull in the middle of the 100 Years' War at this point because of the Black Death. Can't we normalize relations with England again so that we can make money by the wool trade? And that's why, he ends up he ends up murdering the King of France's brother, because he was all for keeping up the war and like retaking Gascony and stuff and Calais. Yeah. And then by the time you get to Philip the Good, which is John's son, and Philip by this point is fully like a Low Countries man, and like he founds like his own order of chivalry, that distinctive chain of the Order of the Golden Fleece. Right? Yeah. And then by the time you get to Charles the Reckless, they call him Charles the Bold, but that's because that's not accurate. Charles the Reckless is a more appropriate translation of his French epithet. But yeah, Charles the Reckless, he wants to essentially make the Burgundian inheritance, this weird patchwork crescent of territory from the Low Countries down to southern France, its own state. And again, you sort of see the increasing ties between this house of Valois, Burgundy, to the Low Countries, and even to Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, because he was born in Ghent. And he, I think at one point he has this...
I'm actually drinking a bottle of Golden Drug at the moment, which is, has the Dragon of Ghent as its logo.
Yeah, but like at one point I think Charles made this speech to like the Low Countries where he says, "My heart is always hither," which Van Loo means that he always felt like he was a Low Country man first, or before he was the Holy Roman Emperor or the King of Spain.
Yeah.
In fact, that's kind of what pissed off the Spanish at first, because he brought in all these Flemings into these important court positions, and the Spanish grandees are like, hey, those are our jobs.
Probably a lot of Jews as well, to be honest. I can imagine he also brought in a lot of Jews from there. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's about to talk about John the Bold. Like in Dutch, it's Jan zonder vrees, which indeed means John the Fearless. So I also indeed have to kind of laugh when I hear like Charles the Bold. Fearless is indeed far better.
Mm.
But I mean, like for the Dutch, Charles V is a more important
Yeah.
character because he was the tutor of William of Orange
Really?
and the father of Philip II.
Yeah, that part I knew.
Yeah. So.
So if William of Orange, we're talking about the son of William the Silent, right?
No.
Oh.
That is William.
Oh, okay. Man, that's
the same person. Yeah.
Okay.
So the name William the Silent comes from the fact that there is this story that that there was this massive prosecution of Protestants in France, and the Charles V was asked to help and intervene and deal with these Protestants. Now, of course, Philip II agreed with him. Philip II and William of Orange knew each other personally.
Huh.
Yeah, they were raised at the same court.
So like William the Silent was like a ward of Emperor Charles in that sense?
Yeah, he was a ward because William the Silent was the son of a Protestant household.
Oh, so they were already Protestant by then.
Yeah, he was already Protestant, but then he inherited Orange, which was like a Catholic cousin. In order to make claim on that inheritance, he had to become a Catholic.
Oh.
So, as a boy, he was then transferred to Charles V's court, where he would be taught to be a Catholic. But once he remained a Catholic well into the Dutch revolt until, people said, well, you're Catholic, you're leading a Protestant rebellion, pick a side, my dude. So that's kind of like how that happened. This is something that the Spanish still held over his head, by the way. Like, he was like a fake Christian, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but yeah, that's kind of the story behind that. But as for the Silent, he was asked his opinion on what to do with these French Huguenots. And William the Silent said nothing. Hence, he got the name William the Silent.
Yeah, I knew that part. He was famously taciturn as well. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely truth that he was a pragmatic individual. But he was also, again, this is where you've got like this perfect symmetry in history, where William of Orange was like Philip II was this renowned recluse who like built his own convent where he would be in prayer all the time. And, people had to come to him if they wanted his judgment on anything. And meanwhile, you've got William of Orange as like this extreme extrovert who was the kind of person that when one of his sons was born, he ran into the street and invited everyone to join the party, So again, you've got like this perfect symmetry between like this absolute recluse and this absolute like guy, this people's person. Was this extremely amicable individual, but I mean he had to be to achieve because he was of great international renown. Like Elizabeth apparently made a note of him when she heard that he was assassinated. Like it was international news. At the time.
He was the first. Yeah, William the Silent was the first guy to be assassinated at close range with a pistol. Because the first guy to be assassinated with a gun, period, was this Scottish nobleman. Can't recall his name, but I think he was the wife or the husband of Mary, Queen of Scots. Yeah.
It wasn't even his first assassination attempt. He was shot in the face by a bullet before in Flanders, I think, somewhere. So, like, he was shot through the cheek. So, yeah.
Oof. Yeah. Philip II always struck me as this pretty severe man. Obviously, incredibly devout. Because I believe this is post the Council of Trent, where they've basically established this, the Counter-Reformation, the Catholic countries. But I will say this: I will always give Philip credit for the fact that after the failure of the Spanish Armada, he actually did go out of his way to help those widowed and orphaned by the disaster, even though it added to his debts and caused him to go bankrupt again.
And it wasn't the first time. Like, didn't they like
Yeah.
try it twice?
Yeah, I think like I sort of going back to the 80 Years' War. I'm convinced that apart from the fact the Spanish didn't figure out how economics worked during like the colonial era, the thing that really screwed Spain was the fact that they kept sinking so much gold into the effort to hold on to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
They literally were throwing good money after bad.
Yeah. Well, it also saved the Netherlands was their constant war with France. I mean, and this is something that we do not often talk about in history a lot. But you know, a lot what saved the Netherlands was also Spain's many other wars where they constantly had to, like, one was distance between Spain and the Netherlands, which is also what led to his disastrous policies in the Netherlands, because he responded to something that we call the Beeldenstorm, which I don't know, like the statue storm. I don't know what it's called in English.
I've never even heard of it, but go on.
Yeah, so that was the big instigating moment, which started in Flanders, by the way, not in the Netherlands. But there was this major riot called the Statue Storm, in which, in protest of Catholic rule, people started to storm the cathedrals and churches, and started like smashing all the saints' statues.
Oh,
because you know that's a faux pas in the Protestant religion.
I get it, but like I've always disdained iconoclasm. But yeah, I get it. But like, man, yeah, I get it. I get it.
In Flanders, and this then spread throughout Flanders and the Netherlands. And you know, you got like cities that turning Protestant overnight during those iconoclasms, and that's what Spain responded to. However, the thing was that those statue storms were already over by the time the news reached Spain.
Yeah, and like Philip's sister, or his half sister, I think, was regent there, and she realized that the situation had been calmed down. But so she sent this desperate letter to her brother, because Philip basically ran everything from the El Escorial in Madrid. But unfortunately, by the time it reached there, the Duke of Alba had already arrived with his army, and just it really. I think I know this event you're actually talking about now, and I always felt there's such a tragedy to it. It's like, no, if only it had reached him in time, and he'd been able to tell the Duke to like stop. Maybe that could have been averted. Maybe at least there could have been a more peaceful dialogue.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh God, and also like Alpha and his predecessor. What was he called again? First you had the Duke of Alpha, and then you had the Duke of. He was actually a good general.
Yeah, he was just really hard man. Like you, I remember once reading a great book on Spanish history. He was friends with this guy who was a famous poet. I forget his exact name, but. As he grew older, he seemed.
About Alpha or his predecessor?
I was talking about specifically the Duke of Alba. Yeah, but like by the time the war kicks off, he's become this very hardened man, very ruthless. And in fact, there's this one bit where
his ruthlessness was one of the reasons for the actual start of the 80 Years' War.
Yeah.
Because he started something that we call the Bloedraad, the Blood Council, in which he just started like basically murdering entire city councils. And anyone suspected of being a heretic. So he basically started his own inquisition, and on top of that, he then like to fund all of that, he raised taxes.
Mistake.
Yeah. So you know, that was kind of like the moment Dutch were like, no, you gotta go. That's basically when Alpha started like his reign of terror, started sieging cities. Then the army mutinied, and it was even worse because these were unpaid mercenaries.
Always a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you basically had this like entire army just running amok throughout the Netherlands, eager to plunder all of these cities. Were mostly Italian, by the way, and and then you got like you had the Duke of Alpha, and then you got, oh my God, he's the guy who conquered Antwerp.
Um, I don't know. Would it be Don Juan of Austria?
No, no, no. He was also Spanish.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah. But like sort of circling back to what I started earlier, I always, like I said, even though it added to his debts, I always gave Philip credit for helping the widows and orphans of the veterans of the Armada disaster, mostly because as Elizabeth's government refused to give
Parma.
any relief
Parma.
to their the Duke of Parma. That makes
Yeah.
sense. But anyway, because like Elizabeth refused to give any help to the sailors of her navy, even as they were dropping dead of plague, and people like Francis Drake and Admiral Lord Howard were writing these letters to the court saying, "What are we doing? These men get and risk their lives for England and for the Protestant cause, and we're literally hanging them out to dry. What gives?" Uh, it's like I guess.
It's funny,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
I mean, yeah, it's interesting. Like, there's so many books written by non-Dutch historians about like the Netherlands and what makes it so unique and such a unique war theater, especially for that period. I mean, we're also like pioneers in like the star fortresses. I think that's also a Dutch invention.
Huh.
But yeah, like there was already like the cities and these fortresses were built like again through kind of like negotiation. Like, these are now fortress cities, and these are normal cities. So they would invest in like the fortifications of like particular cities to kind of create already a kind of like precursor of the waterline. So there was always this kind of like holistic design going on in the Netherlands. So that's what makes it an extremely interesting country, because so much of it is artificial. And yeah, we'll see if the Dutch will keep up that.
We'll see
if they get like their chance to actually polder in the North Sea, which is an actual plan that exists.
Really?
No, there's actual plan. I mean, if it's a resource problem.
Okay. So
but it's
sorry.
Yeah.
So like one last thing before we finally get to like sort of the new lore that you've come up with other parts of it, because I think we could probably just talk about history for ages, because this is really fun. But anyway, it's always impressed me ever since I learned that the Netherlands was the second biggest food exporter in the world, and again, sort of the tribute to your people's ingenuity. Because obviously, as I'm an American, obviously, mine's sort of the biggest, but we're many times the size, and we've got the Great Plains, which is pretty much the biggest, most area of fertile soil on Earth. We've got this great lurs in the Midwest, like perfect farmland, and we've got so much of it. And yet, again, it's a tribute to Dutch ingenuity that you're able to be the second, even though you're a fraction of our size. And there are countries that have more. Not as good as ours, but as American, that is, but certainly as big, and yet you're beating all of them but us. That's really an impressive feat. I will always be amazed by that.
All these glass houses, which are very productive. I did work for a short time in one of these glass houses. There they made tomatoes and paprika. But yeah, it's a very energy intensive procedure, but also very productive. And in my case, they also used insects to deal with the roach problem, so to speak. So there's also a lot of biological stuff going down there. And I mean, they are self-contained ecosystems in a way. So it's very easy to just spread predators there and let them deal with all the insects in a biological way. So yeah, but I mean, we mostly do like specialized foodstuffs. We do not do like grain and that type of thing. So there's where I grew up, there was a lot of sugar beets, and potatoes and lettuce and that type of stuff. In the glass houses, then they would do like things like potatoes and paprika and all that type of food products. So we're really big in that. And again, because of like our old traditions, we have this very effective market system, um, where people can buy and sell their produce in a very efficient way. And also, we have a very dense infrastructure. Right, we were one of the first countries to have a Ministry of Infrastructure. I happen to work for that at the moment, by the way. So yeah, it's also a matter of very old traditions
Okay.
that is really helping us in that regard. It's just a mindset of yeah, we need good roads. So
Mm. Okay, so the lore. So here's what I know so far based on the Google Docs. Obviously, you've got a lot of stuff on the United Kingdom of the Netherlands because in Association of Ishtar that's still a thing.
hmm
Um, though I believe Louis the Third has by this point the South has greater autonomy in terms of
hmm
things. You have a
yeah,
thing on the Victorian England where Prince Albert's still alive, so Victoria
hmm
hasn't completely gone into seclusion.
yeah,
France, we have Charlemagne II. We have the establishment of the battle chassis. We are post Lorraine incident.
hmm
Austria-Hungary is basically decrepitating. Germany has
yep,
not yet unified, I believe, but
yeah. It's
Prussia
not
is
gonna
still.
unit. It's
Yeah,
not gonna unify.
yeah, because in your alternate thing, France will win the Franco-Prussian War.
Yes, yes.
And I think that was about it as far as I know. The major factions. Oh, and I think there was a bit on what's it called, Elysium, the giant bell
Yeah,
thing in orbit.
yeah,
That has this big arcology inside.
yes.
Okay, so what's sort of the new stuff that you've got now?
Oh, I'm always adding stuff. Like I'm currently working on a kind of like history Liverpool and Novopolis.
Right.
So that's in the pipeline. I've been developing that together with some people on my Discord. Again, if people want to contribute to this universe, join our Discord and join the conversations.
So what's the idea behind Novopolis? Sorry if I pronounced that
So
wrong.
Novopolis is a city constructed by Hooter Cup.
Uter crap.
Yeah,
I loved
uh,
that pun.
as a kind of like artificial, well, not an artificial city, but like a pre-constructed city that's completely planned out. It has some of the most megalomaniac projects that were functional, but they're quite grand. Are concentrated there, oh, I forgot all the names, but it is a conglomeration of various like mega projects from around the world condensed in one location. We kind of used when we developed it. We kind of used Armac, which is the city constructed by Tutankhamun's father, um, dedicated to the sun god Aten.
Right, Akhenaten, the
Uh,
heretic pharaoh.
yeah, the heretic king, indeed.
Hmm.
To kind of create kind of a thing. Johan, we're gonna ask Johan to make like some impression images of it. We are working on some impression images
Okay.
of Liverpool that already look bloody amazing. Maybe I can.
And where did
Um,
you say Novopolis would be situated?
yeah, so after some consideration, it's gonna be on Flevoland, which is a completely artificial province.
So
That's
land reclamation, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's like if you look at the map of the Netherlands, right in the middle of it, there is this weird island, like right in the middle of the country,
Mm-hmm.
and that is Flevoland. That didn't used to be there, so it's going to be in the southern part of it.
Oh, so I'm just looking at a map right now. It's the bit that's, I guess, between Friesland and North Holland.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's a completely artificial landmass that used to be called the Southern Sea, and that's gone now.
Huh.
So we also have the Afsluitdijk to the north of that, which is one of the biggest building projects in the Netherlands that connects North Holland to Friesland.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's like a massive project. Also, the Delta Works are a thing in our version. Um, they were kind of like build ahead of project because like one of the things why Belgium chose not to splinter off of the Commonwealth,
Mm.
or was because of that massive flood doing so much damage, and it's also caused the rise of Uterkop as a logistics company,
Hmm.
which they then used to construct like this new harbor in the middle of the Netherlands. But yeah, the idea is that it's going to be a very big port that connects Germany to the North Sea. There's going to be a new channel that connects Germany to Flevoland. Whether this would work in reality, I do not know, but I mean, I'm sure that Uterkop can make it work because they control all the logistics, or rather all the infrastructure projects. So, yeah, he didn't want to become the second Armac, where the moment that he dies, that the city loses promise, because that's the problem with cities like this, pre-constructed cities. They are a symbol, not just, they're often not very practical, but they are a symbol of the new power of the new people in charge, like Armac was. So the moment that the old king died, Armac immediately lost its status, and all the power reverted back to God, what was that city again? Not Cairo, but back to the former place of residence of where the priests of the old religion still live. So he kind of like, he's more practical than that, the guy who came up with this. So that's kind of where I'm building it, and like it has this massive. It's also this testament to the future. So there's a lot of Art Deco and Streamline inspired architecture there as well. Mostly Art Deco, because I want to be a bit more optimistic. Streamline there's a bit of a different philosophy behind it. It's very scientific, let's put it that way. So that's the difference between Streamline and Art Deco. Art Deco is really decorative and really like a testament to the future and progress, and our Streamline is more like very German, right? Art Deco is French, and the Streamline is German. I think that's probably the best way to make the distinction between the two. But yeah, no, we really want to use the I'm sending you some sketches right now. Really want to make that distinction between the architecture of various places. So England's going to have a lot of emphasis on neo-Gothic architecture, the medieval revivalist style. Then we have Uterkop, it's Art Deco. I don't know what we're going to use the Streamline for. Maybe something Prussian.
And these sketches are looking pretty good. I've got them on the screen now. Yeah. I know. Like, I'm looking at the last ones. I know that Zeppelins and like airships are inefficient, but man, there's a reason why they show up in steampunk settings so much. They just look cool.
Yeah, indeed.
There's nothing wrong with a cool factor.
I myself, I'm not a big fan of the whole airship idea, but when you look at it, like, I mean, they need to be there, right? They need to add that little bit more life to it, and But I have not like developed a lot of rules for the role-playing game so far about aircraft. Like, they are there, but I don't know. I don't want them to be this because they also could ruin a lot of things, the inclusion of them. So I want to be as specific as possible with them. Maybe have some gunships, but I'm not sure why these gunships will not just be airplanes. But yeah, that's again, if people want to help me develop such ideas, join our Discord, help me develop them, and maybe they'll get included in a role-playing game. Just saying.
Yeah. I mean, like, I remember, like, when I learned for the first time, one of the reasons the Hindenburg blew up was because we had, like, America, we had this regulation that you weren't allowed to import helium, and that's the whole reason why, or one of the big reasons why it was full of hydrogen that day. It might not have blown up if it was full of helium. God. Bureaucratic.
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. I think, like,
There's great story elements, though.
Yeah, my family lived in New Jersey near the landing field. In fact, my great grandfather was there on site when it happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listening to that audio recording of the guy who's
Yeah.
there.
And he says, "Oh, the humanity."
Yeah. Yeah, funny how that goes now. That guy's a meme.
Yeah.
I also have some sketches of the upcoming video here.
Crazy. However, how stuff becomes memes so easily. But, you know, we live in the internet age, so it's to be expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the humanity. You don't hear it as much anymore, but when I grew up, yeah, you hear it a lot. You hear it a lot. Yeah, and also something else new that we have is these things. Got new STLs now as well. So people want to have like miniatures for their games. They exist. They can be 3D printed at any size. And yeah, they will be available on our upcoming Kickstarter, which I will hope you'll become a VIP. Because the sooner we reach 300 VIPs, the sooner we can launch your Kickstarter.
Hey, from what I've seen, I would say it's worth it. And for what little my endorsement is worth anything.
I appreciate it nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, the art is looking incredible. We now also have the puppeteer. I don't know if you've seen the art for that.
I don't think so. Or if so, I don't recall.
Yeah. So one of the unique. I mean, we don't really have classes in the upcoming RPG, but puppeteer is basically the thing is that they're by the 1850s. They already have like drones. Particular water drones. There's like a chapter in the core rule book about it that kind of like explains the history and how our version of the Unabomber used it to blow up a scientist.
Huh.
Yeah. So you know, I wanted to make an impact with with the drones, so to speak. But yeah. Look at this thing. This is it's actually an edited version of it. But yeah, we're now starting to work on some alien concepts. Here's the.
Yeah, that is lovely.
Yeah, and this is the puppeteer.
Ah.
And we also have some civil puppeteers as well. And yeah, the idea is that they use drones. So we have a system for radio, for remote control. So you too can control your own steampunk predator drone.
Oh.
And we also introduced the idea of pulse, which is basically just digital signals, but you know, we need to give it a bit more pizzazz.
So, let me see. I'm trying to remember, because I had this thought and it sort of skated away from me. Darn it, I don't seem to still have the control rod. Guess I'll have to go back to looking for it. So, on the subject of... Oh, yes, now I remember. Because I think I briefly mentioned this earlier in in one of our in Discord, or because it's easy to have ideas. The hard part is finishing them, and that's why I greatly respect that your commitment to getting this going. Mm-hmm. I sort of had a similar thing. I believe I mentioned it. The idea of the Vernian age. Because I basically had this idea that what if because if you look at Jules Verne, because I love Jules Verne.
Right. Yeah.
He is one of the greats for a reason. And when I first heard about From the Earth to the Moon, I was so amazed to learn that the only thing that he really got wrong in terms of space travel was the fact that we would get there with a giant gun as opposed to rockets.
Yeah.
And so back when Iron Age Media gave as one of its short story prompts the Outlanders, and it was sort of this image of some guys looking at a steampunk airship in what looked like a reddish wasteland. I immediately had this idea of what if we're in the age of imperial colonialism, but they start colonizing the planets if we had that.
Yeah.
And there was in fact, there's this. Have you ever heard of Cecil Rhodes?
Uh, yes. Who was he again? Yeah,
British industrialist,
Rhodesia?
really big into Southern Africa. Yeah. And I actually found this quote by him that let me actually look up the exact one because it's kind of bonkers, but also kind of impressive. Hold on a second. Okay, here we go. The world is nearly all parceled out, and what there is left of it is being divided up, conquered, and colonized. To think of these stars that you see overhead at night, these vast worlds which we can never reach. I would annex the planets if I could. I often think of that. It makes me sad to see them so clear and yet so far. Yeah. It's like, damn. That is, I don't know about you, but that is peak imperialism right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, if I ever, because like I've got a bunch of other stuff going on at the moment, but I would love to sort of do a sort of a thing like that, a sort of 19th century space race with a story.
Are you all familiar with Space 1889?
No.
Oh. It's another role-playing game. I forgot who's making it, but yeah, that's basically a role-playing game about that.
Okay, hold on.
More kind of like, I think it's more kind of like Etherpunk, where ether is real.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's kind of like the idea that space is a liquid.
Right.
Void.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's also a French artist called Alex Alice.
Huh. Okay.
I had him on my show. Who is making? Oh, what's it called again? I forgot what it's called. Actually, I have posters by him in my bedroom that I'm looking at right now. But it's also this 19th century in which they are going to Mars. It's a more kind of like Carter-inspired science fiction.
What do you mean by Carter-inspired? Sorry.
Yeah, Alex Ellis. Amazing Art Nouveau artist. Everything is Art Nouveau. Everything looks bloody amazing. And kind of, I guess, this Zeppelin-esque airships in there. But highly recommended. With, both influence of both Art Nouveau and anime in there. Like old anime, like 1970s anime.
Oh, of course.
Let me see, what is his stuff called again? What was it? It's just amazing art. And it's called French graphic novelist. Yes, I know your art looks amazing. What's your series called? Like, also, it's not called Space. Or is it called Space? Yeah, here. The Universe in 1875. Castles in the Stars. That's what it's called.
Oh, okay.
Now, in fact, his art Kickstarter art book.
Yeah. Because I'm like, in terms of like alt history and stuff, because that's always a fun thing. Because like my sort of, whenever I look at that sort of thing, my view is that on the one hand, it's basically speculation, and speculation is fun but pointless, it is pointless, but it's also fun. That's sort of the way that I've always viewed it, because again, it's the best way to sum it up, because obviously you're never going to be certain in terms of like if something had gone differently, then this would have happened. But it is still fun to talk about, even if you never can have that certainty. And are you familiar with S.M. Sterling in any way?
S.M. Sterling.
Emberverse is a big one.
No, not familiar with them.
Well, he sometimes does a bit of alt history too, and there was one that I really loved, but unfortunately he doesn't seem to have finished, though there are rumors that he might still. It's called The Lords of Creation, and it's the space race, but the Soviets and the Americans discover that Mars and Venus are in fact inhabited with sentient life, and the settings are just a send up to like the 1920s pulp fiction. So like Mars is kind of like John Carter and so forth. Yeah, because like I said, alt history is can be really amazing if you just take, because truth is stranger than fiction. What if you took it and you tweaked it and you made the truth into fiction? And
God, I'm trying to think about what's the guy called again who said all blood runs red. Because that guy, Eugene Bullard. Some call him real life's main character.
I don't think I know of him, but the name is familiar, or maybe I've heard of him somewhere.
Eugene Bullard, he was the first black American aviator. He was a pro boxer. He played in Louis Armstrong's band. He got he owned a nightclub in Paris, France, where really famous people worked under him. He fought in both world wars.
Sounds like he had a storied career.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And he ended his life as an elevator operator. And when he wanted to sell his his autobiography, it got returned to him every time. This is too unbelievable.
Yeah.
This guy fought with lethal wounds and kept fighting. It's fucking ridiculous. He was also not penal legion, the French Foreign Legion trained during the First World War, and then he kept on fighting regardless, even when his unit was disbanded or relegated to easier parts of the front. He stayed fighting in France. It's fucking ridiculous. He got shot in the face.
Oof. Yeah, that's amazing. But I guess we're gonna sort of start wrapping up the stream, mainly because I just can't do this for multiple hours. I don't know how professional gamers do it. But yeah, this has been really fun, and I especially loved the history talk, though that actually seemed to take over what was supposed to be a promotion for your steampunk game. But yeah.
I mean, for me, it's all the same. I mean, like I said, people can follow the game on associationofishtar.com/KS, where people can become a VIP for $1, and then they'll get additional content once the Kickstarter goes live, hopefully in the first quarter of 2025. And we're working on a lot more arts. People can already playtest if they want. Please do. I can use all the feedback I can get. So help us make the role-playing game that you want, and playtest, please.
Yeah, but yeah, I would really love to, maybe in the Discord we can sort of continue the history talking on our own time and stuff, because this has been really fun. It's been really nice to sort of meet you face to face, as it were, and we sort of, mostly me picking your brains. But yeah. So yeah, the Association of Ishtar, people, it's a really fun idea. It's got a great concept, and it's got some real talent behind it, especially in terms of the art. If you're into this sort of stuff at all, I would definitely recommend following it and following Bonsart.
And again, people can contribute their own ideas. I give writing workshops for just that purpose. Also writing workshops for beginners. And we've got 8 books out. We've got a coloring book, and we're working on 2 games. So go check it out.
Alrighty. To all those of you who tuned in, thank you very much, and hope you have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, you too.